Thrones is back. Game of Thrones is back, and it's in full force with its new show, House of the Dragon. It is a show that's based hundreds of years before the events of the original series of Song of Ice and Fire and the Game of Thrones TV show. Its own separate entity based around George R.R. Martin's works and his history in the world, specifically the Targaryen Civil War, called the Dance of Dragons. That's not too much of a spoiler, but that is the most I'm going to be saying about spoiler territory, which won't be warned. Everything else, any other spoiler that I say, will be fully warned. Yeah, so let's just dive on in. I'm a huge Game of Thrones fanboy. I loved the show. I love everything about that world. So I really want to talk about this show as it's coming out. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be starting from day one. I'm going to be doing 2 episodes at a time, just because I feel like that's the best way around it, just so then I've got a fortnight between each episode. And then in between the episodes I can do different stuff, I can make different videos. But yeah, that's beside the point. Let's get straight into these first 2 episodes, episode 1 and episode 2. Let's start with episode 1, Heirs of the Dragon, or The Heirs of the Dragon rather. So the first thing I think the show does really smartly, a really clever thing that they do, is first episode is directed by Miguel Sapochnik, who, if you do not know, was one of the directors from the later seasons of Game of Thrones. He directed episodes like Hardhome and Battle of the Bastards, and those are some of the best episodes from the later seasons of the show. People who like the later seasons of the show, as few as they are, they will recognise Miguel's style and be like, oh, okay, cool, it's a bit more of a seamless transition. And those who weren't as big of a fan of the later seasons will still know that Miguel is a good director because they've seen those good episodes. And Sapochnik does an amazing job at directing this first episode. Everything is acted to a T, everything is perfect in its place, exactly where it should be, and that's all down to, and mostly down to, Miguel's direction. In terms of returning people and people who are returning to the show, there is also a number of different crew members, from the art team to the camera operation team and various different other departments in the film industry, that are returning from the original show to this show, which just helps get that seamless transition from one show to the next show and make it all seem like it is still part of that cohesive universe, because it is part of the same universe. Let's talk about the cast, shall we? Because the cast is bloomin' brilliant. I think all members of the cast, I've got a couple written down here that I want to talk about specifically. However, all of the cast, every person in the cast is doing an amazing job so far. I can't really say anything bad about them, to be honest, because everyone's doing a really good job. I'll go into specifics about certain characters, but other than that, not yet. I'm really happy with them. Let's get started. First off, Millie Alcock. Millie Alcock as Princess Rhaenyra is incredible. I haven't seen any of her work previously to this, but she is doing a stunning job at being a kind of like pre-Daenerys almost. Like, if you're watching it in chronological order and you watch with House of Dragons first, then watch Game of Thrones, you can really see Rhaenyra as like a blueprint for what Daenerys will eventually be, and I'm really excited to see where her character goes. I understand that she's only in it for a limited time because there will be a time jump in the show, but I'm very interested to see how much further she can go before needing to leave and before the time jump happens. But she's doing an amazing performance, and I look forward to seeing in other stuff that she does. Continuing the younger actors, we have Emily Carey, I think, as Alicent Hightower. And again, she's another amazing performer who's doing a brilliant job, who I haven't seen in much or anything really beforehand, anything that I've clocked her in at least. And she's just doing an amazing job, she's doing a brilliant job, and their chemistry together as really good friends really translates well onto screen. They do have some really good chemistry, and the scenes that they share together is just brilliant. You can tell that these two characters have been friends pretty much their entire life because of who their dads are. Moving into people who I was really surprised at, actually. People who I was really surprised at for how good of a job they did is, first off, the actor who plays King Viserys, Paddy Considine? I'll call him Paddy because I'm not gonna try and butcher that surname. Paddy does an amazing job at Viserys, which I was really surprised at, because when I saw that he was cast as Viserys, I'd only ever seen him in comedy work in films like the Cornetto trilogy. I haven't seen him in anything else, so I was a little bit apprehensive when I first saw that he was going to be playing the king in the earlier episodes because I didn't know what he was going to be like in a serious role, but he is doing an amazing job. He really conveys the emotions that a king would face in the position that he gets put in this series, and I think that it is an amazing job. I cannot praise him enough. Slightly less surprising is Matt Smith's performance as Prince Daemon. I've got my notes down here, just double checking the names. Matt Smith as Prince Daemon, he is doing another incredible job. Slightly less surprising because I'd only ever seen him as Doctor Who, as the 11th Doctor. I'd only ever seen him as a very noble, very childish, very happy-go-lucky kind of a character. But I'd heard that he has done really good work in other stuff as a more malicious character, and Daemon is just another one that he can put onto that pile of really good malicious characters. He does an amazing job at capturing the insecurity that the younger brother of the king would have, particularly when the king keeps shooing him off and isn't giving him a job that he feels like he deserves. What more can I say? It is just a very strong performance from these two. The last two people that I want to talk about is two lesser characters in this episode which do get a bit more of a shine in the next episode, and that is Otto Hightower and Lord Corlys Velaryon. And both of them are doing an amazing job at political enemies of the crown, or political allies of the crown, or political people who are conniving in the background, which is what Game of Thrones, the reason that Game of Thrones is so popular is because of that conniving and that political back and forth between characters. And the actors who play these guys, Rhys Ifans and Steve Toussaint. I'm going to say Toussaint. Ifans and Toussaint do an amazing job at their respective characters, Hightower and Velaryon, and their characters only just develop more, and their performance just gets better into the next episode, which I will be talking about in a bit. Overall, I think this first episode was a really good, strong way to reintroduce us to the world of Westeros, and very partially it sets up the villain for this season, I suppose. I'm not sure, because it's a time jump and because this series is about the Dance of Dragons. I'm not sure how they're going to play it in terms of characters who don't make it all the way through to that time period. I'm not sure. I'm trying to really skirt around spoilers right now, but it sets up something really interesting, and it sets up something really, a strong concept in a minor way, ready to develop upon that in the next episode, which, speaking of, episode 2. The Rogue Prince. Now, episode 2, despite being named after Daemon Targaryen, Matt Smith's character, he is barely in it at all. He appears in one scene. I don't know, it is definitely Matt Smith's episode, because the one scene that he's in is an absolute stonker of a scene, but he's not in it for anything else, or maybe like 2 other scenes after that. That's beside the point. First off, the director, Greg Yates. I can't read my own handwriting there. Greg Yates, let's go with that, is a director that I haven't personally seen any of his work. Brand new to Game of Thrones, which I think is another great idea. He does an amazing job. Everything flows together really naturally. He has to work with a child actor, which is very difficult to do a lot of the time, but she does an amazing job, and he does an amazing job working with her. I'll get to that in my spoiler talk. I want to talk about the score in this, because they bring back a lot of the music from the original series. Like, the main title sequence is the same main title sequence as Game of Thrones, or at least the music is the same. It's the same theme. Can't think of the right wording for it, but they use a lot of the same score, and they use a lot of the same themes and pieces of music in the, I'm not a brilliant music expert, but they use a lot of the same music in House of Dragon that they did in Game of Thrones. And again, like I was saying about the last episode, it just helps make this seamless transition from one show to the next, and bring us back to the earlier days of Game of Thrones and the better episodes of the later days of Game of Thrones, to make us feel more comfortable with being at Westeros and more comfortable watching this show. I think the conflict that is set up in this episode is a really strong one, and one that will translate well from the pages of the books to the screen, and it is a very believable one within the confines of Westeros, and also within confines of a historical or a medieval fantasy story. I just wanted to say now that the conflict is very believable, the villains that they're setting up look very interesting, and the characters themselves are very strong, both on a writing standpoint and on an acting standpoint. And this goes for both episodes. Now, without any further ado, I will talk about the spoilers. So, this is a big spoiler warning here. Boom, 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 spoiler warning, spoiler warning, spoiler warning. If you want to skip the spoilers and go straight to my final thoughts. I'll put a time code here. Boom. Boom. And I will then you can skip to that time, and I won't be talking about spoilers anymore then. Let's spoilers. First off, I really like the fact that, this is going to sound grim as anything, really like the fact that Viserys had to, or didn't have to, but felt like he had to kill his wife to try and, during the C-section, during the birthing scene, during the labour scene, that little scene between him and his wife, and he was in tears and she was terrified and she didn't want to do it, and he was forcing her to do it. I think that was an amazing scene. Paddy Considine did an amazing job in that scene, despite how messed up it is and how the fact that ain't love. He clearly doesn't love her as much as he's claiming to, because if he did, he probably wouldn't have. That was an amazing scene, and that just influences the character of Viserys Targaryen so much more, knowing that history about him. If we just started later on in the story, like after that fact, the audience potentially wouldn't have had that, oh, he's been through some stuff. But now that we have seen that, it works better, in my opinion. Sticking with the first episode, I love the fact that Matt Smith plays Daemon like just a dick. I find it really entertaining to watch Matt Smith play a baddie. It is brilliant. However, despite that, you can really see in the scene where he's in the brothel that he is a very insecure person. And again, that translates over into the next episode. You can see that the reason he's acting the way he's acting, the reason that he's lashing out, isn't because he's just a malicious dude. It's because he's a very insecure person. And that translates into him being, or rather doing, malicious stuff. And it's more so to get attention, more so than getting anything out of it. Yes, at the end of the day, he does want to be the heir, but he is not there to be the heir. He's there to have the attention from his brother and from his family and from the court and from the world. He's desperate for attention, which I feel like younger brothers across the world can kind of relate to a little bit, and that's going to help him in the long run, make him become a stronger character for it later on in the show. I think the conversation between Daemon and Viserys is a very strong one. Again, going back to Daemon's insecurities and the pressure that Viserys has on him as king comes to a head there, and I like how they're still talking to each other like brothers, despite one of them being the king. And I think Constantine's and Smith's performance really shines through very strongly there, and I really think that those actors should be giving a lot of credit for that scene, as well as Miguel Sapochnik's direction. The Long Night is a thing, and always has been a thing. We know that from the show that the Long Night is fact, but what we didn't know was that people were actually taking it seriously, and that if the Targaryens remained on the throne after Robert's Rebellion, if Robert's Rebellion never happened, then Westeros would have been in a much stronger position to face the White Walkers, because, as we know, the Targaryens tell down the line, heir from king to heir, from king to heir, from king to heir. They tell them about the Long Night, and they warn them about the Long Night, and they make their heir promise to protect the world and get ready for this terrible event that's coming their way. And I find it really interesting, and find it really clever that they're using that to make us trust Viserys even more, because they say at the very beginning of the show, one of the first things that they say, it's at the end of the episode, but it's one of the first things that you see in the series, is Viserys confessing to Rhaenyra that there is something coming, and Long Night is a tradition, is something that traditionally we tell our heirs about to prepare the next king or queen about this thing. And it makes us trust them, because we know that that's a thing. We know that's going to happen, and we know that a lot of people don't actually believe it's going to happen. So to hear Viserys saying that this is coming makes us trust him even more, and makes us like the character even more, despite the horrible thing that he did earlier in the episode to his wife. The next 2 points are about Alicent Hightower, and first one is I really like how she has a habit of picking out her fingers, because I do the exact same thing. I just think that's a nice little nifty thing that makes her character a bit more of a believable character, makes her, like, not everyone does it, but it's nice to see that some people in this show do have bad habits like picking at their fingers. It just makes the world feel a little bit more real. But the second point that I want to make about Alicent is a makes me very uncomfortable to talk about, because it is about her 14, 15-year-old girl being sent to comfort the king, who's in his, like, what, 50s, 60s? And knowing where I know this show is going, I know that she eventually does have her son, and I'm very curious as to where the show goes with it, because obviously in Game of Thrones, in the original show, you had young people marrying adults, like Sansa was married off to Tyrion, and we all loved Tyrion, but that's because Tyrion didn't do anything to Sansa. We know from what we know about Dance of Dragons, Viserys does have children, or at least does have a son with Alicent Hightower. And I'm unsure as to where Alicent Hightower's character is going to go, because right now she's a bit of a victim at the moment. She's being sent by her father to this old man, being sent essentially to have sex with him. That's essentially that's what her father's telling her to do, in less words. But we know later on in the series she becomes a little bit more of a malicious character, and she goes against who I see as the main character of the series in Rhaenyra Is. And I know when I was first learning about the Dance of Dragons, I was on Team Red. I was on Team Black rather. I was on the Blacks. I was with on Rhaenyra Is' side. So I'm interested to see how the show goes about going forward with that, and goes about, are they going to stick with the fact that Rhaenyra is a victimized character and was tormented when she was younger and essentially forced into marrying an old man, or are they going to turn her character more maliciously? Which, if they do, similar to how Daemon, you can understand where he's coming from, you'd very much definitely understand where Alicent would be coming from. She was forced into this role against her will, essentially, and now she wants something out of it, which, if they do go down that road, could be very good, but I'm just not sure where they're going to be going with it, and I'm curious to see where they will go with it. Yeah, my last note on the first episode is the fact that the Iron Throne is bigger now, and I feel like that is a good idea. I really like that idea, to make the Iron Throne this bigger, grander, bring the swords down the staircase to make it close to what it is in the books. Because in the show it was one of the things in the early series that was a little bit underwhelming, was the Iron Throne was just a chair made out of swords, whereas before it was this big centerpiece of the throne room, and it went up and there was a staircase going up to the seat. And I think that making that staircase that was in the show all out of swords was a very clever idea, was a very smart idea, because then it becomes closer to what the book fans are familiar with. And in terms of continuity, it's very easy to understand that Robert Baratheon might not want to have, or might want to just destroy as much of the Iron Throne as possible and get rid of that to create his own new dynasty. So that's an understandable thing that you could very easily in your heads just put two and two together. It's not something that needs to be said or needs to be explained about. Moving on to spoilers for episode 2, the egg scene, man. The kin egg scene. That is amazing. That was brilliant. That scene where it's this really special traditional artifact, hundreds of generations of Valyrians, and probably more so than that, of Valyrians having this tradition of a dragon rider or a dragon lord having the egg in their cradle when they're a baby, and then Daemon stealing that away from him. I love it so much. I really, really like that concept, and it's a really believable source of conflict in Game of Thrones, in the context of the history. And in the context of the child, the previous owner of that egg, being a stillborn, or near enough a child who died very early on, is a very believable conflict, and is understandable why Viserys acts so rashly when he finds out. Rhaenyra and Daemon have a really good chemistry together as well. They show that in the first episode, they show it now, and I think Matt Smith and Millie Alcock, check my notes again, I think Matt Smith and Millie Alcock do have a really good chemistry together as uncle and niece, and as potential enemies moving forwards, or potential allies moving forwards. I feel like Rhaenyra has a really good way of manipulating Daemon, and really knows how to get under his skin in a way that she can use. I really enjoyed the princess versus princess Rhaenyra versus the queen that never was, Princess Rhaenys. I really do think that those two characters have really good chemistry together as well. I just think Millie Alcock has really good chemistry with the entire cast. Like, that's what I've been saying that over and over and over again, and I think it's really true. I think Millie Alcock has a really good future ahead of her going forwards in acting, because she is doing an amazing job in this show. But that scene talking about how men will never want a woman on the Iron Throne, and that Viserys knows this, is a really good conversation. Not only is it talking about feminism in a medieval thing, but also it's just a really well written scene without that context, without even thinking about feminism and anything like that. It's just a really good, strong, well written scene from two conflicting sides. It's just a really good scene. However, it is preceded by one of the most uncomfortable scenes that I have ever watched in Westeros. Not the most, but one of the most uncomfortable scenes. And it's a really simple scene. It's just an old man talking to a young girl, and it makes you really uncomfortable. And I can only praise the actress who plays Rhaenyra Velaryon. I cannot remember her name. I didn't write it down in my notes, unfortunately, but she does an amazing job. And I think Greg Yataines does an amazing job at working with this girl to get her performance where it needs to be, because she does a stonking job. And watching that scene, watching this old man go on essentially a date with this young girl, this 12-year-old girl, just makes you cringe for the entire scene. You're just like, this is very uncomfortable. But eventually Viserys does the right thing and goes for the 15-year-old girl instead of the 12-year-old girl. Is that really the right thing? And that's all down to Rhaenyra Velaryon's actress, who does an amazing job at portraying a character who's been told what to say, but is very obviously very scared about what will happen if she says the wrong thing, and probably even more scared about what will happen if she says the right thing. But going back to a scene that's a little bit easier to talk about, and that is the Daemon and Rhaenyra and Egg scene. That is a bloomin' brilliant scene. Again, Matt Smith does a really good job. One thing that I really like that what he does is he throws around the egg and plays with the egg. He treats it as if he doesn't have any respect for it, which goes against entirely what he's saying, which just goes to show that everything that he is saying in this scene goes against what he was talking about beforehand. He don't care about tradition. He just wants the attention of his brother. He just wants to stir the pot. And Matt Smith playing with the egg, throwing it around from hand to hand at the end, he passes it like it's a rugby ball back to Rhaenyra, and he's like there's one shot when it cuts back to him and he's hugging it like it's a teddy bear or a pillow, and it just all goes back to him being a very insecure character. And I think that is a brilliant choice from, I don't know if it was Smith or if it was the directors or if it was the showrunners or whoever, but I think that is a very clever idea to make that character so insecure and playing him that way rather than just playing him as a dick. Going back in time a bit more, I'm not doing this in chronological order. I'm not doing this in a really professional way. I do apologise. This is my first review. I can only apologise. The way that Rhaenyra, I think she shows her really clever character by asking which egg they took, because Daemon took the egg that was going to belong to the son who died at childbirth, who died in his crib. So having Daemon steal that dragon for his own son really is a slap in the face to King Viserys himself. And that makes his choice to be a lot more angry, not choice, but that makes his reaction so much more believable and gets the ball rolling in terms of, we need to go to Dragonstone to get this egg back. And having that being the result of Rhaenyra asking which egg really makes her the central point, the focal point of that conflict, because she's the one who figured it out. She's the one of my lights just died. That means this light's probably going to die, so I need to be a bit faster now. I need to get a shift on. But I think that's a really nice little point. No, I can say this out of spoiler talks. So, welcome back to those who have... there goes that light. I knew it! Welcome back to the people who did not want spoilers. So, the last things I'm going to talk about is the little bits and pieces of things that didn't quite work well before I make my final explanations. First off, I'm not the biggest fan of the design of the crab feeder. He looks brilliant, it is executed spectacularly, but I'm not the biggest fan of his design personally. And also in episode 2, there is one shot where I can't tell if it's a really neon blue banner or if it's a blue screen, but in one of the shots it pans out a little bit and you can see through the doorway and there's just a bit of blue, and I can't tell if it's a banner or if it's a blue screen which they just forgot to remove in post. But those are the only 2 negative things that I can find in these first 2 episodes, because they are just mwah, chef's kiss, incredible. So my final thoughts. This is a series that I am loving. I am so happy to be back in Westeros again. I have waited so long for any form of Thrones content to be released, and having it being this one, because I was always wanting a Dance of Dragons series to come out for years, and finally they're making one, and it was announced, and then I just couldn't wait for that to be made, and now it's being made, and I am so hyped, son! I cannot wait for the rest of the series. I cannot wait to see how these characters develop. I'm excited and nervous to see how the older actors for Rhaenyra and Alicent take over the role of those characters. I'm sure that they are going to be doing an amazing job. I'm looking forward to seeing Alcock and Carey's performance develop before their time in the show ends. Yeah, I'm just looking forward to it. It is going to be great. It is going to be stupendous. It is going to be amazing. I don't have a rating. I'm not a big fan of rating system. Not a big fan of numbered rating system, because it tends to put 2 films or 2 episodes or 2 things on the same level when they really shouldn't be. So I'm just gonna say they were good. They were good episodes. Yeah. Maybe at the end of the series I will make a ranking video of all 10 episodes. But for now, I'm just gonna say both episodes were absolutely incredible, and please, 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 if you haven't already, give the show a watch. It is going to be brilliant, I can tell. So that is my time. Hope you enjoyed. Very sorry about the lights dying towards the end there, but at least we've still got the big boy working. I've been Jack, and hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.